I'd like to hear more about your awards. What stories did you write for those? Did you know you were going to win? Did you know you were nominated? What was kind of that process?
For Writers of the Future, I wrote a story, sent it off. I got notified I was a finalist, and so I was like, and then after a few weeks, they said, "Sorry, you didn't win." And then about a week later, they said, "But we would kind of like to include your story in the anthology because we sometimes have published finalists." And I was like, "Yay!" The next quarter of the contest, which happened to be the next contest year, I had already submitted another story for that, and they called to say, "Guess what? You're a finalist again." And so then I waited and waited, and then they called to say, "You're a winner." When I wrote the stories, I didn't feel like there was anything particularly special about them. I didn't feel like, "Ooh, this is an award winner" or anything like that. But then the one I wrote that won the Nebula was kind of a different thing for me. And it is a special story in a way. I went to a writing workshop done by Dean Wesley Smith and Christine Catherine Rush out in Oregon. And we had to write a story while we were there. And I was like, that's easy. I've done that at Orson Scott Card's workshop. I've done it at the Writers of the Future workshop. It's no problem for me to write a story in 24 hours. I can do that. And so the prompt that they did a thing where they came up with a character and a location and a problem. And I don't remember what the character was for reasons I'll explain in a moment. But the location was the middle of the sun. And the problem was, can't get a date. And so we'd come up with several of these, because for people to have variations there at the workshop. And then they said, "Okay, now the character we've just come up with, forget that character. Imagine it's you. You are the one in this location with that problem, and write the story with a character based on yourself." We then had 24 hours to write a story, and that was due at 7 a.m. the next morning. At 11 p.m., I still did not have anything. And I ended up finally going with an idea and writing through the night. And I wrote about a 2,500 word story that had an ending that wasn't even an ending. It was just kind of fell flat. But it was about a Mormon on a space station in the middle of the sun. And he can't get a date because it's just a small branch, and he just got there, and he was made the branch president because they just had missionaries be the branch president before, and there are no single Mormon women within 90 million miles, and there are these alien beings that live inside the sun, and some of them have joined the church, but they're not really dating material. So I wrote it, and I knew this story just was not a complete story. I had failed at the workshop, and my friends who were there, who were non-Mormons, read it and said, "This is really good. I want to read the other 5,000 words of this story." And I was like, I have no idea what those other 5,000 words are. But I went home from the workshop and I thought about it, and I tried to figure out a plot for the rest of the story. And I did. And the reason I say this story was different was because in many ways it was a very personal story for me. And I was kind of putting more of myself into the story than I usually do. Now my target market for this story ended up being Analog Science Fiction, which is the hard science fiction magazine. It is, to say the least, not known for religious stories. And I balanced my main character, who was religious, with a scientist who was an atheist, and they clash over relations with the aliens, but they end up both with kind of the same goal, and so they work together towards it. At the end of the story, my main character feels like, there was some divine intervention in resolving things. The atheist character has a rational explanation for what's going on. So I managed to walk a very fine line so that the editor of Analog didn't have any problem publishing the story. I kind of thought there was a chance I might get nominated for an award when someone I did not know, I had no relationship with whatsoever, posted on his blog his list of Nebula nominations, and my story was on there. And it was a real squee moment for me because he was the writer of the Doctor Who episode that turned me into a Doctor Who fan. And so the mere fact that he had read my story was, made me squee. The fact that he thought it was worthy of a Nebula award was, something that just. But so I was thrilled when I was nominated, and I really did not expect to win. I just really did not expect it. I wrote a speech anyway because I always hate it when people get up there and they're like, I didn't think I was going to win, so I didn't write a speech. I'm supposed to thank somebody, I can't remember who. But so I wanted to make sure that in the unlikely event that I did win, I would be prepared. So my advice would be put yourself into what you're writing. Make your story personal. Let out a bit more than is comfortable, maybe. The thing for me was that I wrote it in such a way that I did not feel I was violating my own beliefs, but that it wouldn't feel too preachy to people who don't believe the same as I do. It's kind of a tough balance, and I managed to strike it for this story. So I was very happy with that. Yes?